Hello. Today, we are looking at the incredible software music player by Signalist called HQPlayer Desktop. It really boosts your listening experience by upsampling your tracks. Plus, it takes on the heavy lifting that your DAC usually handles. Since it runs on your computer, it has way more computing power, allowing it to match the performance of those super pricey DACs. If you spend any time with HQPlayer, sooner or later you end up in the Preferences menu. Sometimes, if your window is maximized, it might not be obvious where it is. To open it, click on the HQPlayer tab at the top left-hand side of the screen. A pop-down menu appears which says Preferences. Some people say it is not very user-friendly, which I have some sympathy with. But the player produces such fantastic sound quality. The setup screen appears like you can see here, and when you do, it's tempting to think this is where the magic happens. In reality, this is where many people accidentally make a good system worse. This video is not a tour of every option in the Preferences menu. It's about how to think about that menu, and how to approach it without undermining stability, timing, or coherence. Most problems people attribute to HQPlayer don't come from filters or modulators. They come from changing preferences too early or without a clear reason. So I want to slow things down and put some judgment back into the process. The Preferences menu in HQPlayer is not a tuning panel. It defines system assumptions. Many of the options here affect how HQPlayer behaves globally, how it buffers data, how it interacts with the operating system, how it manages timing, and how tolerant it is of instability elsewhere in the chain. The effects of changes here are often indirect. They may not be audible immediately, and they often interact with other parts of the system in ways that aren't obvious. That's why random experimentation in preferences is risky. You're not fine-tuning sound. You're changing how the system operates. There is a small subset of preferences that usually need to be set correctly, and then largely left alone. These relate to device selection, basic output format, buffer sanity, and overall system stability. If these are correct, most HQPlayer systems already sound very good. This is the point many people miss. They assume good sound requires deep configuration. In practice, good sound usually comes from not disturbing a stable baseline. Once this core is correct, you have something to listen to, and that matters more than any theoretical improvement. The most dangerous options in the Preferences menu are not the obscure ones. They're the ones that look attractive. Lower latency, more aggressive buffering. Options that promise responsiveness or precision. People change these because they sound like improvements. But unless you are addressing a specific, observed problem, these changes often degrade timing, increase sensitivity to network behavior, or reduce overall coherence. These options are not bad. They are just frequently used without a reason. And in HQPlayer, intention matters. Here's a stopping rule that will save most people a great deal of frustration. If your system is stable, the timing feels right, and nothing is obviously broken, stop. Only change a preference if you can name the failure mode you're trying to address. Not a theory, not curiosity, an actual problem you can hear or observe. If you can't describe what you're trying to fix, the most rational decision is to leave the Preferences menu alone. Restraint here is not conservatism, it's competence. There are situations where changes do make sense. I discuss these potential preference changes a little later in a future video. So please take a moment to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It helps the channel a lot. These potential changes usually involve genuine stability issues, buffer underruns or dropouts, known network constraints, or specific hardware limitations. In these cases, preferences changes are problem-driven, not exploratory. You're restoring normal operation, not chasing improvement. That distinction matters. HQPlayer has a reputation for being difficult. In my experience, that reputation mostly comes from treating preferences as a playground rather than as infrastructure. When preferences are changed without a stopping rule, the system becomes fragile. And when fragility appears, HQPlayer gets blamed. In reality, HQPlayer is very consistent when it's allowed to be. HQPlayer rewards patience. The Preferences menu is not where musical insight appears. It's where stability is protected. Most of the time, the best outcome comes from setting a small number of things correctly and then stepping away. Good sound usually emerges not from clever configuration, but from leaving a coherent system alone long enough to understand it. If this way of thinking is useful, I'll continue to approach HQPlayer and audio more generally from this judgment-first perspective. Thanks for watching, and if you have found this of interest, please like, subscribe, and ring the notifications bell.